Thank you, everyone. I know a lot of you guys are based either in Middle East or India. Thank you very much for joining us. I think it's about 8:30 IST time. We have the Americans here with us. Apart from hosting the wonderful World Cup, we also get to hear from them about the EB-5 program. Um, Let me kindly introduce myself. Sam Hussein, Director for BLS Global. You've probably been engaging with one of our investor engagement team in reference to EB5 and making a decision on the right project. This webinar is not really about BLS, it's more about what Apple Archer has to offer. We have a number of people on the panel here today. Obviously, we have Mark Wittenberg, the MD for West Virginia Regional Center. Ken Pierce, CCM Director for Apple Archer, and Paul Ruby. You've probably seen him in a number of our roadshows, also from Ruby Law Group LLC. And then we have Charles here as well. Charles, if you can kindly put your hand up. There you go. Excellent. And then we have Ryan Wilson here as well. So it's really for you to ask as much questions as possible to the project and the sponsors, because we're hearing a lot of information, a lot of news about what's happening regards to the EB-5 program, as well as a lot of information about Trump making this wonderful news. It is a good time, to be honest with you, if you are an EB-5 investor. We do have a chat feature which we really want you to utilize. To press that chat feature and make sure you ask a lot of questions. Because after this webinar, there will be private one-to-one consultations if needed, but it's a really good chance for you to understand about this project and why a lot of investors are choosing this project. Without further ado, I think, Mark, I'll pass it over to you so you can explain to the audience in regards to your regional center and the project that we have available today.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody who's joined us today. My name is Mark Weintraub. I'm the managing director of the West Virginia Regional Center, and also, along with Ken and Paul, run Apple Mountain KY, which is your investment vehicle for this EB-5. So we're thrilled to welcome you to this exclusive webinar today. We're going to introduce a little bit about this EB-5 investment opportunity, and then we're going to answer your questions. So whether you're new to the EB-5 program or actively seeking an eligible project, today's session is designed to provide you some key insights into our Orchard expansion project, the benefits of investing through the EB-5 program, and how your investment is going to help fuel U.S. agriculture while paving your path to a green card. Sam already briefly introduced our team, so let me just quickly kind of run through what we're going to talk about today. Charles Ham, who's the CEO at Appalachia, is going to talk about this specific project. And then Ken's going to talk a little bit about why this is a great EB-5 project in general. But let me just give you a couple of high points as we get ready to get started. Number one, this is a rural project. It means that as an EB-5 investor, you go right to the front of the line. Number two, this project was approved in 2024 by USCIS. So you're not taking any risk that this project is not going to be approved. That's already done, which means that the only thing that's really outstanding is whether or not your source of funds is going to meet USCIS requirements. And if it does, then you've got yourself a nice, safe EB-5. Number three, as an investor in this, you're making a loan to the Orchard, and that loan is a first priority, first lien secured, which means when the Orchard makes money, you get paid back. And if for some reason, some crazy reason, the Orchard doesn't succeed and doesn't get you paid back, you have a first lien to take over the Orchard along with the other investors. It's a very, very safe, very strong position. Last but not least, this business is so easy to understand. Like, plant apple trees, grow apples, sell apples, repay the investors. So with that in mind, let me introduce to you Charles Ham. Charles, the CEO of Appalachia. He's been working to bring this project to reality for quite some time. You're going to hear that the apple orchard has already started. There's already 60 acres. There are already apples growing. So it's off and running already. So Charles, please give us a little project overview and share some exciting developments.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mark, very much. And thank everybody for attending. I think one of the things, probably a precursor to all of this, is to understand why I'm in apples at all. I am basically the CEO of Continental Heritage, which is an insurance company that writes coal reclamation bonds. And in the course of that process, we found ourselves with quite a bit of land that are strip mined historically. And we tried to figure out all kinds of options and things to do with it. And we partnered with the USDA Research Center with an entity in West Virginia called Patriot Gardens, which is doing this already on a nonprofit level. And bingo, what we discovered is that when they strip mine, they basically take the top of a mountain off and create this flat land at a higher elevation. And why is that important? If you look at the states like Michigan, New York, especially Washington, all of those orchards at higher elevations, 1,200 feet and above. So we had a perfect environment from an elevation standpoint. The soil is good. I think one of the important features we have that you won't find in other orchards or other agricultural areas is that underneath these mines are underground mines, and those are all closed. However, they all fill up with water. So when you think about the filtered water that goes and settles in those mines, you're talking about millions and millions and millions of gallons of water. So things like drought are never going to be an issue for us because we're basically have drilled down into those mines and we're taking the water out and using that to water the orchards. So that's very important. I think that the Eastern Kentucky area that suffered a lot of job losses, a lot of things go on there. We're going to provide them with an opportunity to come back to work and really enjoy themselves in the outdoors with the orchard itself or the pack house. The support that we've achieved from various parts of the federal, state, and local government, I can't tell you how important that's been. For example, the pack house that we're building, which is outside the EB-5, but will be included in the overall project, we've received about 12 million in grants to build our own pack house. And we'll also have a controlled atmospheric storage facility, which will allow us to store apples for up to a year. And that's very important because it allows you to play with the market a little bit. If you can't get all your apples to market immediately, you can put them in storage. And when you pull them out 6, 8 months later, it's like they just came off the tree. And that's very important. Investing in apples, it's not just a smart agricultural thing, it's a smart investment period. I mean, people are always going to rely on food. If you look at the climate conditions that are occurring around the United States today, and I'm primarily talking about fresh market apples. These are the ones in the grocery store, or processed apples, which are the ones that you'll find in the little bag that are sliced up. Those are the primary apples I'm talking about. We are not doing any juice apples because those are sold by the ton, and China primarily dominates that market. But if you look at the areas we're talking about, Washington, New York, Michigan, North Carolina, they've suffered a lot of issues when it comes to weather. If you look at Washington right now, the flooding out there and the amount of rain they're getting and all of those things are going to be devastating to their apple crops, I believe. North Carolina, the hurricanes pretty much wiped out a big piece of their apple products. So we're well positioned to take advantage of that. The area of Kentucky that we're in, it's considered an Area 5, which is an excellent area for agriculture. So all those pieces tend to come together for us. The current orchard that we have is 60 acres. It's 120,000 trees. It wasn't without its challenges, but those challenges became education to us. We spent a lot of time getting the soil ready, but we figured out ways to get that done much quicker without all the efforts that we had to. So that's going to be very successful. We have 70 acres primed and ready to go, and that's going to be 140,000 more trees. So even at a 10% loss of trees, you're still looking at a significant number of trees. So right now, 120,000 trees in the ground. We've had a couple of harvests already. However, It's hard to monetize them without the pack house, which will be done this spring, because you need to have that vertically integrated system and not have to ship your apples to Michigan or New York to get packed and sold. So we're very excited about 2026 as the pack house comes online, and we can take more advantage of the efficiencies of going from orchard all the way to the grocery store. But what we've done so far is we've donated a lot of apples, and that's been very successful. But we're excited about 26. That is the year. Our overall goal down the road, though, is to plant 1,000 acres, and we're looking about 2 million trees in total. And we're planting our trees about 21 inches apart. The rows are 10 feet, so we're very high dense orchard, which makes for a lot of efficiencies in maintenance, picking, all those things that you would look for in efficiencies. Here's a picture of the orchard as it sits. It's a very beautiful piece of art in certain times when the sun comes down over the mountains and you see the reflection. It's very, very beautiful. But one of the things I think is important, and I think it's important to you, is jobs. You need the jobs to create the validity of the EB-5. That is not an issue here. We're going to create way more jobs that are going to be required than if you had the indirect jobs in. So we're pretty excited about this project, and we welcome you all aboard. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Charles, very, very much. We appreciate it. So now let's talk about how this ties into the whole EB-5 immigrant investor program. So for that, the EB-5 program allows eligible investors to obtain their U.S. green cards by investing $800,000 in a targeted employment area like Appalachia orchards. And, let's talk about why rural is such a big deal. Well, one of the strongest features of Appalachia orchards is its rural designation, which brings powerful advantages under the EB-5 Reform Act. Let's keep moving through the slides here a little bit and get ourselves to the rural EB-5 slide. So rural is so important because we have priority processing. Rural EB-5 projects receive expedited treatment. You go right to the front of the line. Faster processing means a faster path to a green card. Our anticipation is that our EB-5 applicants, once they have filed their application, are going to wait no longer than a year for their green card, probably even faster. And there are no visa backlogs even for China or India. No cutoff dates for rural project. So immediate visa availability within months and concurrent adjustment of status for those that are already in the United States. It's a really quick, really great way to get fantastic status in the United States. 3, lower investment threshold. Because you're in a TEA in a rural area, you only have to invest $800,000 versus $1,050,000 in the non-TEA areas. So lower entry cost for the same immigration benefit. And let's not forget about these numbers when we talk a little bit later on about this newly proposed Trump card, which is not even approved yet or anything of the like, because this is also less expensive than that by a long, long way. Finally, this is actually an important point that you need to keep in mind. The EB-5 program has been around for a long time. This has long-term policy support in the United States Congress, especially for the rural incentives that are involved here. Congress backs rural incentives across the economy in the United States, whether it's immigration, whether it's extra money for farmers who are providing the food for America. Rural America gets a lot of support from Congress, and this is one of those pieces. Once you've made your application, you're fixed. You don't have to worry about this program sunsetting. You don't have to worry about the policy changing. You're locked in. You get what you need. But it's really important also to note that rural doesn't mean remote. It just means your petition is prioritized, your cost is lower, and your future is more secure. So, keeping all of that in mind, let's turn to Ken. And Ken, maybe you can walk us through the investment structure and how it supports a path to permanent residency.
Sure. No, thank you, Mark. Yeah, one of the things that really has attracted us to this project is the low risk that we saw with it. What we like is with this business model, it's really simple to understand. It's a very simple value add. But more importantly, for all the investors in our limited partnership, we're in a first lien secured position on all the land, all the orchard, all the farming equipment. And as the farm grows and expands, so does our secured lien. The other thing we love is by using an economic model, we have more than enough job creation to ensure all of our investors get the jobs that are required to get their permanent green card and 2 years after they get their temporary green card. The other thing we love is, the team that we're working with Ryan and Charles. This is an established team that knows how to grow apples. They know how to manage apple orchards and they know how to expand it. So we're very comfortable that this is probably one of the best and most secure investments that's on the market right now. Now, USCIS does require your investment to be 100% at risk. But again, we think with this business model and the team that we have assembled, that we have a high likelihood of being able to return everyone's investment back in 5 years. So thank you, Mark. That's all I got.
Okay, that's great. So now moving along, I think we're going to go ahead and turn this back over um, to Sam, and let's work our way through questions and answers.
Stop the screen sharing. Okay. Yeah, so that was, thank you very much for giving us a good outline in terms of your project. We have some questions, and I'm encouraging more people to put forward more questions. We have a question from Mr. How much money has the developer put into this project?
Charles, that's a great question for you guys.
Yeah, we've got 9 million invested so far. And that doesn't include the pack house, which will be another about 12 to 14 million.
Okay. Paul, when you get investors, what do they look for in a project in terms of, do they look for the first lien, the capital stack? What do they look out for? When you advise your clients? This is for Paul. Paul?
Sure. I mean, look, I think that it is a lot like anything. All the things that Sam mentioned obviously are, considerations. Where's the money coming from? Is it, developer? Is it a commercial loan? Is it, EB-5? Is one of those out? Are there multiple, commercial loans, which would often then put the EB-5 folks, into second and even many times third, position sorts of things. I think like many things in life, what we want to do is we want to look at the whole picture and, how strong is one, how strong is the other, there are ways to make it up. There's not really a perfect, way to do this. At the same time, what we're talking about here, first position creditor on, property, on assets and so on, is of course an advantageous position to be. Another thing though, I think that's unique about this project that's important for investors to know is, if you're building a hotel and you have your capital stack and something goes haywire, funds that were expected are not available, budget goes over, something like that, you can wind up with a building that has no windows, and no beds and no sinks. And then everyone is in a lot of trouble and everyone's going to be scrambling. And what do you do, to fill that gap? This is very different. The risk of non-completion here is mitigated, right? Because we have a scenario in which you can directly, now that so much of the farming equipment, land clearing equipment, things like that have been purchased, connected to that first 60 acres, you can draw a very straight line from the amount of funds available to the amount of acres completed to the amount of apples, sold and revenue generated, having your expenses paid and so on. Which is to say, right, like a very simple example is if half of the money remaining, available is there for the planting season, then half of the acreage can be planted this planting season, and then, the other half will be done. And so, and it's any proportion of that is possible, but that's the critical thing here is you're not going to wind up on the building that has with the building that has no windows on it. You're going to, and then of course at the end, on the back end, we have expenditures that create countable EB-5 jobs, and those will be banked, of course, during the construction process. But then there's also a straight line from revenue because there's a relatively fixed number of trees per acre. They all bear about the same amount of fruit, and that fruit will be sold. And so the revenues then turn into additional EB-5, countable jobs between, direct induced and indirect. So there's really a straight line from the exact amount of money, not just through construction and seeing it done, but also towards becoming eligible for I-829 approval on the back end. So, the goal here is, and that's another thing that, we all thought about at the beginning of this, is the linear connection between each investment that comes in and making sure that person and that family has the, ability to complete the process successfully. And, to my understanding, I would think agricultural projects, and this one in particular, because so much of it's already been done, are somewhat unique in the marketplace like that. There's just such a straight line from the investment to completing the project and the process successfully.
Sam,
I think when we looked at this,
Sam, just hold, Sam. Let's be crystal clear here, because Ken and Paul and I have spent years speaking with EB-5 investors about their needs and their wants, right? And it's actually quite simple. As an EB-5 investor, the number thing you want to know is, am I going to get my green card, right? The second thing you want to know is, am I going to get my money back?
Yes.
Third thing you want to know is, what kind of return am I going to make on my money? That third one is so far distant in the hierarchy of needs for these investors. So let's just talk about 1 and 2 in very stark terms. Am I going to get my green card? In this project, number 1, 927 approval, we already have it, okay? So we know as long as we do what we say we're going to do in the plan, the EB-5 is going to be approved so long as there's no issue with the investor, right? So the investor puts in their $800,000. As long as we take the $800,000 and we spend it on buying trees and planting trees, the job creation's already been approved by USCIS. 927 and the economic report already approved. So that part's all done. No risk there. You make the investment. As long as your application is solid, you're going to get your green card. Then the question is, are you going to get your money back? That's all what Paul was just talking about. As an investment, this is a straight line. The money goes in, you plant the trees, you grow the apples, you sell the apples, you pay back the investor.
Good. So that's what we looked for, Mark, to be honest with you. When we looked at your project was, do you have the I-956F approval? Yes.
Right.
You provide the first lien to the investors? Yes. Is it a rural project? Yes. Is there a chance for expedited? Yes. So you're ticking all these boxes. That really is what the investor looks for. So going to another question, actually, because a lot of investors will file because of the deadline that we have. What guarantees do you provide if there's a denial guarantee? If someone's denied their petition,
so if somebody's petition is denied, it's going to be denied because there's some issue on their end. Okay, it's not going to be denied on our end because our end is covered already. But if that happens, look, we got a long list of folks that are interested in investing in this project. We have a limited number of spots that we can eventually take. If somebody's put their money in and that for some reason they are rejected, we will do everything we can to go out and find you a replacement investor, get your spot retaken by somebody else, and get your money refunded.
Great. And I think we don't have many slots on this project. It's not like a big project. Yes, with hundreds of slots.
No, not even.
Yes. So going back, like time is very important here because we know we have EB-5 till September next year. Mm? So when it comes to working with your source of funds, I know with investors it can take up to 3 months, 4 months, even 5 months. So we don't have much time, especially if there's a good project. I have got a question from Mr. Akshay saying, what is the time limit to apply? When, if you have a client now who wants to reserve a slot, what is the time limit? How long can you hold that slot for into this project?
You could hold out until September if you want to, but there's no guarantee that the spots are still going to be available in September, number one. And, number two, right now, there's no retrogression. There are no lines in these rural projects. Your stuff gets sent in, it gets processed. That could change, right? And I actually believe that things are going to get much faster and much more intense in the next 9 months because people are going to be worried about this September deadline. You've got to get your stuff in before September, but then you've got to make sure you have a spot before September. And how many spots are truly going to be available between now and September, especially in rural projects that have already been approved? That's a limited number of spots, and that number's not going to grow very much because USCIS is not approving new projects very quickly right now.
And we should talk about what that September, deadline means. I think a lot of people know that there was a significant change to the EB-5 laws in 2022. One of the things that it did was it extended the regional center program. EB-5 will exist for, forever unless there's a major change. It extended the regional center through September 30th of 2027. That's not the September that's 9 months away. The critical thing in the September that's 9 months away is that the US government has economists and they measure the size of the economy and they create something called the Consumer Price Index. And if the economy grows, the Consumer Price Index is a little higher. If, like in 2009 or 10, 11, the economy shrinks, it's lower. It's, of course, very rare that it's lower than the prior year. And as I think everyone has heard in the news, internationally, we're in a high inflation period. That means the Consumer Price Index is rising quickly. What is almost certain to occur on starting for October 1st of 2026, so the one that is a little more than 9 months from now, is they are going to reset the investment amount. We're not sure, and that's required by the law that was passed in 2022. It said we got 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26 through September 30th at the $800,000 level. They're going to then recalculate the investment amount and connect that increase to what they call the Consumer Price Index. The numbers from, good economists with experience in this industry say, to us and have published articles, right, saying that they expect the EB-5 investment amount starting next October 1st to reset to at least $935,000. And that's because of really, really high, inflation, especially in 22 and 23. So the same investment unit, frankly, that costs you 800,000 plus the, additional costs and fees of this process on September 30th will, cost that plus a, almost 20% increase, the following day. And so we, of course, expect there have been times when USCIS had said they would increase the investment amount, and they did or they did not. There's always a really big rush. And people are going to be looking first for pre-approved projects. That's going to be the most important thing. And those units are probably going to be gone by the spring. Then there's going to be a free-for-all on additional projects that have a track record, have their applications filed to USCIS and so on, leading up to that September 30th deadline. But my suspicion, based on what we've seen in the markets, and I couldn't tell you, is this going to be April? Is this going to be March? Is this going to be May, June? Somewhere in there, all of the rural units on approved projects that look even remotely viable are going to be gone. And it's because of the impending significant, nearly 20% we expect increase to the investment amount that's going to kick in, on October 1st of next year of 2026.
Like I'm getting questions about Trump in terms of the Trump gold card, and some ban list. I think it's Mark and the team, it's really important to explain to the audience that you are grandfathered into this program. Because once you file your petition, it's not like it can be cancelled because people are getting concerned about the Trump Gold Card. If the EB-5 is going to stick, does this Trump Gold Card really exist, and how they can be grandfathered into the program?
Yeah. All right.
Sure.
This
Go ahead.
program is approved by Congress, signed by the president to exist through September 30th of 2026. There's nothing that can be done to reverse it without an act of Congress, and that is definitely not going to happen. Okay? So EB-5 been around for decades, approved by Congress. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody understands what's happening. You make your application before September 30th. You're going to be just like every other applicant and hundreds of thousands of people who have received their EB-5s before. Okay. Also, no, investment amount $800,000. The Trump card, okay, has not been approved by Congress, has not been through any administrative process. There are no rules. Nobody knows what it is. It's a million, I mean, just based on the president's announcements, it's $1 million that you never get back, right? Never going to get that money back. And you don't even know if you're actually going to get your green card or when. Because unless Congress takes action, they have to shoehorn the Trump card into a very, very narrow set of visas that are not immediately available. There are long lines for those visas. So we don't really understand, without seeing any rules, how they get around all those problems. They have no congressional authorization whatsoever. And it's $1 million instead of 800,000, and the $1 million never paid back. The 800,000, you have a very, very good chance of getting your money back.
Yeah. I'm also getting a question on the loan, which we said we will have private consultation on for the loan, and they're also asking for the administration fee. I think admin fee will be based by case. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Oh,
Sam, we're happy to have discussions with people about admin fees and their various and sundry circumstances, how many investors are in their group, for example. We would say, folks, it's important to talk about the economics over and above the $800,000 investment on a case-by-case basis with Sam's group and then with us if we need to get involved.
Yeah, that's something we want to deal with you on an individual basis. Also, I've got a question in terms of what's the worst case scenario, a disaster for the apple orchard? Have you considered that in mind? Like if something goes wrong with these orchards? It's a bit
Charles and Ryan, you guys are the people on the ground with these orchards. What have you guys thought about if there's some disaster there?
Well, I mean, if there is a massive weather event that's never ever happened before, it's kind of hard to protect against that, quite frankly. It'd be no different than having a hotel you build and then a hurricane wipes it out. You just can't do anything about that. So, but we can say though, we are in an area that has never really had those kinds of problems. The flooding in Kentucky, for example, it didn't hit our orchards because of the elevation. So, I can't speak to a disaster that's beyond belief, but we feel pretty good about this apple orchard and where it's situated.
I've got a question from Manoj. In terms of when do they get their money back in terms of years? Based on the projection?
Based on our projections, people will get their money back at the end of year 5. That could extend to year 6 or 7, but year 5 is where we're projecting. And the reason that we're projecting year 5 is because it takes us about a year to plant these trees and get them in good shape, depending on what time of the year you invest. Then it takes a good 3 to 4 years for them to grow and start producing apples. Once they've started producing apples, we can sell them into the market for a year or two. Once we've sold them into the market for a year or two, the income stream off those trees is fixed. We all know what they're going to be. So we'll either have the actual cash to repay investors from the sale of apples, or we will be able to refinance the debt with very, very generous and very available rural and agricultural based loans from the United States government that will be happy to refinance this debt at much better terms than what is being paid.
Mark, I'd like to add too, the pack house will be generating revenue beyond the orchard.
Right.
So when there aren't apples available to run through the pack house, we could do avocados, we could do grapefruit. There's all kinds of different vegetables and fruits that we can do in that pack house that we will be generating revenue outside of the apple orchard.
Got it. Thank you.
Right. So you have a number of plan A, plan B, plan C strategies to facilitate the investors. Are the projects insured? What kind of insurance are in place for these orchards?
Well, we'll have crop insurance for sure.
And do they go straight out to the market, or are they going into the big retail outlets, that the big brands like Walmart's that are trying to get hold of them?
Well, a lot of them will go into the big box stores.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The goal is to sell the apples to the retailers that are literally putting the apples on their shelves and selling them as high quality premium apples. That's who we want to be selling them to. So if we're selling them to Walmart or Sam's Club, we're really, really happy that we're selling to those people. If we're selling to the big grocery store chains, we're happy because those folks are going to pay us a premium for these apples. They're extremely well located, like now all of a sudden Walmart doesn't have to pay to transport apples from New York or from Washington to the middle of the country. These apples are already there. So these apples sell at a premium because of not only their high quality, but also their location.
And one of the advantages that we believe we have from a marketing perspective is that, we have taken a closed coal mine and we've created this economic machine that for the local area, and when I say local area, if you go within 4 or 5 hours of where the orchard is, I forget the number of people, but it's tens of millions of people that are in that area. So we're going to market this as an Appalachian apple. And we believe that'll really, really generate a lot of excitement.
Okay. Mark, there's also a question for your regional center, the track record of your RC. This isn't the first project that you've completed.
No, this is our third project. Every single person who's made application for an EB-5 green card under our programs has received their approval unless they've withdrawn for some other reason. And also a number of permanent green card applications are now pending, and we fully expect them to be approved.
Okay. And we've got some approvals on this current project.
Say that again, Sam.
Do
Sorry.
we have any approvals on this project at the moment? I know we have
We do not have any approvals yet on this project. We have a number of applications that are pending with no questions from USCIS.
Okay. So this is a question for you, Paul. I guess this is an immigration question. If I start in January 2026, when do I expect to get the green card realistically, given the processing and the current quotas and the queues?
Sure. I think there's a difference here whether this is an adjustment of status case or whether it is a consular case. But in terms of broad numbers, what we're seeing now is that most rural forms I-526E are taking something like 7 or 8 months, assuming there's a pre-approved project. The law says that, those petitions will not be reviewed until USCIS acts on the project's application. So if someone just has a pending one, that is not going to be the same timeline. But for one like us, approved, project application, Form 956F, January, say 8 months, puts us to August. If it is a adjustment of status case, someone would have probably filed the I-485 and other applications with the initial I-526E. They'd have a they'd have an employment authorization document and an advanced parole authorization, in the spring, most likely. And what we're seeing now is that the I-485s, the green cards, get approved something like 3 or so months after the I-526E. So that would put it to the end of the year, if some of 2026. If someone is a consular case, and like I'm kind of seeing some of the names here, so I think it may be a lot of India cases. Like, look, we don't have a ton of embassies and consulates doing the interviews. There's a lot of people in India and large demand for interview slots. We've got to do all the background check and so on through the National Visa Center. That's going to be longer. It's not going to be the end of next year. That's not realistic. Is it going to be into 2027? And maybe not all that far? Yes, I think that's reasonable, because we would get, the case transferred to the National Visa Center as soon as it was approved. We would pay the fees, we would do the application, we'd submit the civil documents, we'd get it transferred over, to the embassy or consulate in your country that does the interviews. Certainly, we'd probably be qualified for an interview by the end of next year, by the end of 26. And then it would just be a function of waiting, for an interview slot. If we're doing that in some countries where there's not a lot of volume, not a lot of demand for the interview slot, that's going to be quite fast. Talking weeks, a month, 6 weeks, something like that. On the other hand, higher volume countries, it is going to be, months into 27. There's no way around that. But for someone that's going into a pre-approved rural project, whether it's adjustment of status or consular, that's what I would be looking for, for a prompt, filing in the first quarter of next year. If someone is at the end of that window, through which we're approved, I think it's going to be a very, very different timeline. I think it's going to be longer. There's going to be a lot of volume. The cases that get filed to USCIS at that time are generally going to be of poorer quality. They're going to be rushed, and people are not going to be as the USCIS office is going to look a little more closely. Of course, everyone doing their jobs, trying to be fair, but they are going to look more closely. Those cases are going to be weaker. There are going to be more questions. The timeline is going to be more drawn out. So there really is a lot of really good practical reasons to try to act quickly on this. And if the filing is in January, great. If it's in March, great. If it's in May, great. Once we start going past that, things are going to start looking different. Like I said, units are going to be gone, projects are going to change, cases are going to look different. So there really are a lot of reasons not to let too much grass grow under your feet at this point in time from where we sit today.
I know there's an RBI question, which is from India, because the majority of the audience are from India. I just want to advise a lot of the investors here. Before April, you're allowed to send 250,000. So the husband can send 250, the wife can send 250, so that's 500. Then after April, you can do another 500. So technically, what I do advise a lot of our clients is to get your source of funds into place and start transferring funds and reserving a slot into such a project, because you do want to make sure that you're fully funded into the project. And I think that's what we look for, Mark, don't we? A lot of people ask for partial funding, and we actually advise people to be fully funded, because then you don't get an RFE or there's further questions comes up. What do you say to that, Mark, and the team? In terms of, I prefer fully funded than do partial.
Yeah, look, the best thing for folks to do is to get fully funded and get in the program. And that way, once you're fully funded, we can file the 526E. Boom, right? If you know that there's going to be lag, look, everybody has different source of funds challenges. Understood. No problem. It's why we need to have these talks about administrative fee and timing on an individual basis, because every case is different and every case deserves the time and the attention to make sure that we get it right. If you're somebody who's going to have money coming to the United States and funding over time, suggest get some money over, pay $50,000, reserve your spot in this program, and then get yourself funded. And the faster you can get funded, the better off you're going to be. But get some money over, reserve a spot, and then concentrate on getting the perfect source of funds done.
I'm getting a few more questions, chaps. This is a fun period of time the way we go through. Question from Raj. Under what circumstances could there be a delay in capital repayment? Has this ever happened? What happens financially if there's a bad harvest year?
Okay, so look, what is the possibilities for why things get delayed beyond 5 years or 6 years or 7 years on repaying the $800,000 loan? Okay, uh, the most likely scenario is that trees don't get planted timely, right? And that every time a tree gets delayed by a season, we're going to get delayed on the back end of when we get paid for that, when we're able to finally refinance that tree with a USDA loan and get moving. So the most likely delay is delay in on the front end in planting. Next most likely delay would be just we don't have the greatest weather at some point during the 3 year growing period. And so the growth is a little bit slower than we would anticipate. We haven't had that experience at all. We haven't had that experience at the United States National Guard run Patriot Gardens in West Virginia, which is kind of a sister project to this. We haven't had it with the 60 acres that we've planted and grown here. Everything's gone on time. But maybe we have a little bit of a delay because we have a year that's not as sunny as we expect it to be, or something along those lines. Um, those are your most likely reasons for why things get slowed down a little bit. Um, and again, that just means a 1 year delay until we were able to gather up all the money and refinance the loan, show the financial performance that supports a new loan, and move on.
Okay. I have a question for Paul in terms of if I file and go to the National Visa Center in Dubai or the consulate in Dubai.
Yeah. Look, if someone lives in Dubai, the interview is not going to be in Dubai. It's most likely going to be in Abu Dhabi because generally there's one embassy or consulate per country at which they do the immigrant visa interview. So for UAE, it's going to be Abu Dhabi, but that's just right down the road. One thing I would say is they have been a little bit more strict about requiring someone prove either citizenship or residency. There's many ways to prove residency, but that's going to have to be done in any country where you'd like to have your interview. If we're talking, UAE, you probably have a residency permit. A work authorization that allows you to be there is just as good. It doesn't have to be, a PR through any of those programs. It can be, a work visa. There's lots of ways to do it, but we can't just pick a random embassy in a country through which we have no, other connection. But if a person's living in Dubai, they almost certainly have a, way to be there. And we'll need to prove that, but it'll be easier and we'll get the interview done in Abu Dhabi for that person and their family.
Okay. Ken, do you want to add anything to this?
There's a few things too. I noticed that there was some other questions regarding, change of status. I think maybe Paul can talk a little bit about the
Sure.
change of status and people coming in maybe on a different visa category than trying to change.
Yeah, I mean, these are ones I think with the adjustments of status or whatever, we should probably take on a case by case basis. Someone who's in the US on an H-1B or an L-1 visa, um, there are special, rights to those types of visa classifications that will allow that person to proceed, immediately and without any sort of waiting or additional considerations to changing their status to green card holder through an EB-5 investment. If someone is interested as coming as a visitor, generally you're not going to be eligible immediately. It may be possible after some waiting times, but again, that's kind of a case by case sort of thing that we should discuss because there are other considerations, right? Someone in the US doesn't have employment authorization. It may be difficult to open bank accounts. There's a lot of considerations that go into all these things. But frankly, the lack of a visa waiting queue for people going into rural EB-5 projects gives us the most options we're ever going to have, or what we have right now. So we can kind of consult on those on an individual basis, but super easy to do for anyone in H-1B or L-1. Super easy to do for someone who's been in the U.S. for a fairly long time, maybe as a student. The other ones, we certainly, can tell anyone what may be possible in your case or what will be impossible. And give you the information necessary to make the best decision for you and your family under the circumstances.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say is all the money right now that we're raising this time of the year, we're in December, all this money, the majority of it's going to be going to plant the next 70 acres. And so, and again, for the investors that are coming in, again, those are direct jobs created with their investment. So, and then once we got the next 70 acres funded, then, Ryan and Charles and their team, they're going to be working on the next several hundred acres, depending on how much money we raise. So what's great is this is a completely scalable project. We can continue to grow it and build it as we get investors that come in. But then anything we can't plant this April, May is going to be deferred to be planted in in April, May of 2026. 2027. So
Okay, if someone can't visit the project, how can they get a better insight into the orchard itself? Do you do like a Zoom? Are you doing like a video feeds? What can you do to help someone who wants to?
Yeah. Look, we'd be happy to set a separate meeting for somebody with Ryan, who is the one on the ground there at the orchard running things and making sure they go right. If we want to do some sort of video feed from out at the orchard to show them what's going on. It's cold right now. We'll have to send Ryan an extra jacket, an extra hat, get him to go outside and do that. We can certainly make that happen. But it's also not at all necessary to come visit to do this deal. Most of our investors so far have not visited. So no need for you you don't have to come. But if you want to not come and you want to try to get a little more information and see what's actually going on, we're happy to try to figure that out with you.
Yeah, I think this deal, Mark, is very simple. It's not a complex deal. It's a very
Right.
simple deal for people to get their head around and just, making an investment on that level. And we don't want to see a crazy rush towards the end. So we're trying to advise people to get your ducks in a row and get everything in place. Um, they just a few more questions in terms of, can you just rerun the exit plan again in terms of the refinancing, just to how you're going to pay back the investors?
Well, I mean, this question that just asked, about the exit strategies and how we pay off these investors, they hit the three major ways that it's going to be. The most likely way that the investors get repaid is by refinancing the EB-5 debt. So refinancing the loan that's made by the EB-5 investors to the project by utilizing government-backed USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, or rural loans. That's most likely number one. Most likely number two would be, this apple orchard is performing really, really nicely. It's been built with X amount of money, but it's producing quite a bit of income. So somebody comes up and says, we want to buy the whole orchard for a lot more money than that. You get refinanced when the asset sale has. That's number two. And then number three is just repayment from operations. When you look, and as this discussion goes on, and we're sharing with people the business plans after they've signed NDAs and shown us that they are approved or approvable investors, then you'll see there's actually enough money after a couple of years of growing apples and selling them to pay back investors. So it could be any of those three. If I had to rank them, I think it's refinance, asset sale, and then payment from operations.
Thank you. Very simple. I think unless the panelist wants to add anything to the audience, because what we're going to do is everyone that's actually signed up to this webinar and people that have attended and people who haven't attended, we're going to follow up with you just to get your feedback. And of course, just to shed some more light, there might be a few information that we haven't had the opportunity to explain, but we can do an in-depth analysis in terms of the admin fee and so on forth, because I assume the slots are going to go very quickly, Mark. after this?
Yeah, I think they are. Let's handle one or two of these other little questions that are still outstanding because we've got Paul and he's so busy sometimes it's hard to reach because he does such a good job for his clients. Paul, like you've been practicing immigration law for over 20 years. You've been doing this for a lot longer than it looks like on your face. Um, uh, like how many Indians have you walked through immigration issues generally, and how about on the EB-5 in the EB-5 world?
Yeah, so I'm a business immigration lawyer, and I've been doing this a long time. That includes standard business immigration, starting with H-1B through the EB-2 and 3 process. Of course, it involves hundreds and hundreds of EB-5 matters. Something in the 800 range. Throughout my career. In which I've been the one who prepared the I-526 or I-526E and, any subsequent ones that they've been eligible for. Look, the majority of investors in this historically have been from China, so that's what the majority of my history is. But in terms of India cases, probably about 100 plus, give or take. I've seen cases of Indian-born people starting in the U.S. And India in India cases. I find the India cases not to be particularly difficult. There are some cases in some countries where record keeping for one reason or another is not always that reliable. I generally think in India, we want to work with, a local chartered accountant who can gather everything and then just make sure we're following, the rules we've talked about, Sam before mentioned with the RBI deadlines and resetting and so on and so forth. Like we want to be cognizant of that. But I find, especially if we involve, a local chartered accountant to help us gather everything, we wind up with a particularly strong source of funds. Generally, as long as we make sure the foreign currency, exchange and export goes fine, we can typically even avoid any requests for evidence from USCIS because the cases are so airtight. So, if there's any specific questions, we're happy to get into it. But like I said, I find the India cases generally on the more straightforward side of these, certainly.
We have a question
Thank,
from Mr. Bharat Parak, but that's on the loan. Perhaps we have a private conversation with Mr. Parak on that, or unless you guys want to answer that. I don't know if you can see there's some questions on the Q&A and there's also some questions on the webinar chat.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
do
think
see one on
I
the
think we should have a
webinar.
separate discussion with Bharat on that question.
I know with Mr. Raj, he wants to ask a few more questions, so please do while we take on other questions. Can anyone see any other? Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, my understanding in each EB-5 investment tied to a specific portion of land out of the 70 acres, or is the capital pooled across the
No,
entire region?
the capital is pooled.
Okay.
The capital is pooled, and it's my expectation that we're going to plant a lot more than 70 acres.
Right.
I think Raj, a member of our team will get in touch with you as well as Mr. Bharat Parak to answer more questions. But if you have more questions, we're happy to answer them. Can anyone see any more questions? Because there are some questions.
There's one very quick one, which is just, will the country of origin play a role in the processing time? A few years ago, USCIS said it would. However, they only apply prioritizing or deprioritizing cases when there is a visa backlog for that country in that category. So if a person born in India or China goes into a rural EB-5 project now, they're not going to face a longer processing time. If they go into a rural, non-high unemployment EB-5 project that does have a cutoff date, yes, absolutely, it will take longer to process. But for where we stand today, no one's impacted by the differing policy on applying how quickly they're going to try to get to those I-526s and I-526Es.
And to be honest with you, there's not many good rural projects out there. So we're expecting a big rush after the new visa bulletin. I'm expecting by Jan to be quite chaotic. So this is a project.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, I agree with you that I think it's going to get chaotic, and I think it's going to get chaotic, especially in sort of the third quarter,
Yeah.
right? So July, August, and September are going to be chaotic, and I really, but Paul has been through this a number of times over his career during these chaotic periods,
Mm.
and when he says the quality of the applications go down at that time period. And as a result, the scrutiny at USCIS over those applications goes up. He's speaking from experience.
Mm.
Our job, our goal, and our desire is to put forth the very best 526E application possible and submit that to the to USCIS as early as possible so that we get approval as early as possible. Because we're trying to do the best thing for the investor here, and that's the best thing for the investor. It is, we're not going to submit a halfway done 526E. We're going to submit a high quality 526E. We're not interested in a 526E that's risky because we do not want a denial, right? Everybody asks, how many approvals have you had? How many denials have you had? I've had no denials in our regional center. None. Zero, right? I want to maintain that track record. Zero denials. So we want to make sure we're sending in great applications. The way for us to make sure we're sending in great applications is have the time to make sure that they're excellent. So if people are calling us on September 15th, if we happen to still have spots still together, it's going to be hard to put together a great application. We start on this now. You guys ask us the questions, schedule some meetings with us. Let's work together on this and get a great set of applications done. If we can get it in January, great. If we can't get it in January and it slips to February or March, fine. If we slip to April or even May, as Paul has said, we will survive. But man, if we start in on June, July, and August, folks, you're really setting yourselves up for a much longer, much more difficult process. And we want to avoid that with you.
Mm. No, that's talking from experience for sure. And that should really be, taken not lightly from a lot of the investors because we're going to see chaotic and a big rush, and we don't want to go through back and forth, and just it's crazy at that time. So it's really you need to start working on your source of funds, getting everything in place, and really work closely with your EB-5 attorney, someone that's fully experienced on EB-5. Ryan, sorry, I want to get you involved here in some capacity.
I'm good, thank you.
Mhm.
Uh,
Ryan, maybe you just talk a little bit. You guys went through really kind of your first big harvest this year. You felt really good about the quality of your apples and where they went and how they went. Will you talk a little bit about how harvest went? Where'd you find the people that picked the apples? Where'd you send the apples, et cetera?
so I know some of the questions earlier asked about where our apples went to. This year, our fruit was sold into Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Food Line, and Aldi stores here in the U.S. So for our small
Great.
harvest that we had this year, we had a good market for them. We used some local people to do harvest with here, and then supported it with some other labor sources. But everything went good. We picked a good quality of fruit this year and had a decent harvest.
Yeah. And the labor sources that, you would expect to use as this farm doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles, you feel comfortable that that labor is available to you if you need it.
Yes, I've been able to secure laborers for everything that we've needed so far without any struggles. So
Great.
Very positive feedback from Ryan, which is very good. So I think that's about it. I think, unless you want to add anything, we're just going to launch a poll. I know this was specifically dedicated to our Indian market. I know you're probably about to have dinner. We hope we've given you a good um, outline, and you don't need desserts with this Apple conversation that we've had. But I'm sure there's going to be. But I'm really encouraging Ken and the team to also travel to India because they're always talking to investors, and I know there's a plan to be in India, but don't wait for them to come and meet you. If you are really keen on this project, then reserve a slot, get in touch with the team. Let us start working on your source of funds. Let us start advising because there's a lot of things that we can help you on in terms of like what Mark said. They really want a good petition to go forward. So in order to make sure that they get the right approvals, as it's got 100% approvals, no denials. So unless there's any other questions, gentlemen, I want to launch the poll, and then we do have another webinar coming up, and I want to encourage you guys to have more webinars to go forward on this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we're good there. Charles, Ryan, Paul, Ken, Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Lovely.
Sam, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to you and your team at BLS for getting all this organized and getting us a nice group of folks to attend today. Of course, this will be recorded and should be available later on. I also really want to thank our participants today for being here and spending some time getting to know us and getting to know our project. And we look forward to speaking with everybody going forward to figure out how we can help you, accomplish your dream of coming to America.
Brilliant. Wonderful conclusion to this webinar. And we'll be sharing this if anyone's missed out on this. Wishing everyone a good evening, and gentlemen, we'll see you later on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.